Okay. Welcome back to the Personal Empowerment Podcast. In today's episode, I'm delighted to introduce you to a very special guest. She's not only my childhood best friend, but she is an amazing. Sorry, I'm going to repeat that.
I'm just going to mute myself when I'm not talking so there's no background noise.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome back to the Personal Empowerment Podcast. In today's episode, I'm delighted to introduce you to a very special guest. She is not only my childhood best friend, but she is an amazing, ambitious young woman who has lived with intention from a very young age. She is on a mission to make the world a better place every single day. And she is not only the manager of alumni relations for a nonprofit organization called Enactus Canada, which strives to solve world problems through entrepreneurial ideas, but she's also an author and a total boss babe who is killing it in the network marketing game through her partnership with Moeini. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Nika Moeini. Nika, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Oh, what a sweet intro. I feel honored, honestly, to be your childhood best friend and to have watched you grow through this whole beautiful journey, and now to be your first guest on this podcast. I'm super excited.
That's awesome. So Nika, to start us off, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your mission?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Nika. I'm from Toronto, Canada, and I have, as Parnaz said, always been inspired by this mission of leaving the world a better place than I found it. So from a young age, I was always pretty involved in the community. I always loved to volunteer and just help out in any way I can, whether that was teaching Farsi school classes or just volunteering with my city's youth action committees. So when it came to deciding what I want to do, I went to university for international affairs. So basically focusing on developing countries and how Canada can support them. And after my undergrad, I went on to do my master's degree in international affairs, and actually worked for the government for a period of time where I was focused on gender equality and Canada's role in gender equality policy. Then I moved to Toronto and I started working in the nonprofit field. And kind of throughout this whole process as well, I had my own personal growth journey. And I felt that even though from a career perspective, I'm focused on helping others on this larger scale, I love to help people one-on-one and help people more on a coaching capacity. So after going through my own mental health journey and just overcoming things like depression, anxiety, and just different life experiences, I really wanted to be able to help others. So that's how I started my brand, The Positivity Boss, 2 years ago in February of 2018. And just with a mission of helping people to find their self-worth, because I believe that self-worth is really at the key of personal growth, and really building up your sense of self-worth and confidence is super important. So that's how I started my brand. And just over time, trying different business models and experiences, I realized that with the network marketing business model, I could help a lot of people by being able to coach them and mentor them. So that's how I've come to my business and my career. And that's a little bit about my journey.
That's beautiful. It's honestly been such a pleasure to be a part of your life and to see you have grown so much all these years. And since I've known you, you've always lived with purpose from a very young age. I remember as kids, you would educate yourself and talk about things like climate change or spend your time being involved in the local community to give back. So, do you mind sharing about where this internal drive came from and how it's moved you all these years to do so many wonderful things?
Yeah, for sure. So I think my parents raised me with really good values. And especially my dad, he always was really optimistic. He had this great perspective on the world, and he was always trying to be optimistic and also look for ways to help others. And I think growing up as an Iranian Canadian, we kind of have this perspective of two different worlds, kind of like we know about our Iranian past and like what our family in Iran is going through and like what's happening in Canada. And because I think I grew up in that immigrant household, like I was just really aware. My parents were always really aware of different world issues and different things that were going on. So I think growing up in that environment, I felt like like I would go along with my parents to things like protests and just like they would educate me so much on what's going on. And my dad also loved like just watching the news and educating himself. So, yeah, so I think growing up in that kind of environment and just being exposed to all these problems, like, and also like having these values of wanting to help others, I think I really found this drive. And yeah, from a young age I always thought like, well, if we have one life, like we might as well do what we can to help others like during our time on this planet. So that's really what drove me, is like, how am I going to be remembered like when I die, or like, yeah, like how is the world going to be a better place as a result of me being a part of it? um so that's really what always drives me at the end of the day, is like, yeah, there might be challenges day to day, and but the bigger picture is really like, what are we doing with our life as a whole, or like what do we try to do, like even if you just try your best and trying to help others, I think that's really enough. So
I love that. And honestly, it's interesting because for me, I realized I really wanted to make a difference in the world when I entered early adulthood. And sometimes you think like, okay, like, when you're a kid, you don't really realize what's really happening in the world, or you don't really, I guess, absorb and take in what's really happening and understand. But you understood from a really young age that, just at the individual level, you can make a really big difference. And already you've done so many amazing things to make this world a better place. And I'm so excited to see where the rest of your journey is going to take you. And I always remember you smiling and laughing and just having a really optimistic attitude towards everything that you were doing. Even when you were going through a hard time, I remember you would always just talk about it with a smile. And I'm just wondering where this attitude came from. Was it just something that you think you were born with? Was it something that you built growing up? So maybe you can tell me a little bit about that.
yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, it comes back to childhood. I feel like childhood shapes us in so many ways, like both positive and negative, for sure. But just like some specific childhood memories of like situations was basically anytime like a challenge would come up, my dad would always tell me like, hey, look on the bright side and things are always going to get better. And just every time I would face difficulties, I would learn that. And also when I was younger, my dad and I did a lot of like outdoor activities where we like faced like literal challenges. Like we would go like camping in like the snow, or like we would go canoeing like really far distances where the wind was like really strong and it was like raining, and just like all of these situations where most people would like complain or like be unhappy about it. I saw like my dad and how he handled it, and how he always like braved through it and was optimistic. And like me going through those situations, like I also did that. And also like just different things I faced, like having to move across the country when I was 16, like that was pretty challenging, but I had to look at it optimistically. I couldn't, just be sad about leaving you and like my best friends behind and everything. I feel like I had to have that positive mindset in order to move forward. And so I think it's partly from growing up and just learning that from others, but also me like going through challenges and realizing like, hey, like, I could either let this be really hard, or I could really just do my best to reframe it and get through it and just try to see the positive side of it.
Yeah, wow. I remember even as kids, like, I don't think I ever saw your dad, like, really angry or ever really upset, to be completely honest. He was just always kind of like a monk, like, he was always just content,
He's so chill.
and yeah, he really is, and it's interesting. So I see where, that would have came from. I think, the way that we are raised and, the parenting that we experience growing up really does help shape us. And I'm really glad to hear that you had some positive impacts through the parenting from your father. So that's awesome. And when you choose to take action and do something, you always really take things and you run with it. And by that, I mean you pour your heart, soul, and so much energy into anything that you commit to. So, how do you go so wholeheartedly into everything that you do?
Yeah. Um, that's so funny because that's so true. Like I literally have a tattoo that says massive action on my wrist. I think the reason for it is yeah, just always working hard. Like I was always taught that like in order to get what you want, you have to work hard, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. Now that I'm leaning more into manifestation and like just like the feminine energy of allowing and receiving instead of like that masculine of like the hustle. I'm learning more about just allowing. But I think, yeah, the important part is that your intention is like to be all in with something. And I think part of it comes from just like a competitive nature of like, you know, wanting to do well. Like my Enneagram type is the Enneagram type 3, which is like the achiever. So it has its positives and negatives again, right? The negatives is that you could easily become attached to your achievements, but the positives is that you know you are really driven towards them. And I always think like when people say like how are you so motivated and stuff, it's like, well, what's the alternative? Like is the alternative that you look back and you're like, man, I didn't give it my all, or just having regrets? I think this idea of like potentially having regrets allows me to like go all in because I'm like, well, you know, I might as well give it my all because then at the end of it I can say that I tried my best. But if I really didn't try my best, then I personally feel like kind of guilty or kind of regretful about it. I'm like, man, I could have done more. So I think those are like a couple of different places where it all comes from, but mostly just, yeah, wanting again to leave a positive legacy, remembering that we have one life and just remembering that, you know, you might as well give it your all because this is the one like life that you have.
Yeah, I like how you said that, the alternative that you can think of is, okay, I can give up and not do this thing that I want to do. And I only have one life, so why not live it to the fullest? So, do you think that keeping the big picture in your mind is what's really driving you to want to do great things every single day?
Totally, totally. When I did the Strengths Finder assessment, which I think you've done as well, one of
Yeah.
the ones I had was futuristic. And I think just being able to have a vision for the future
Mhm.
is really important because when you have some clarity on the bigger picture, like what it is that you want to do, those day to day challenges don't like fully bring you down. But when you do lose sight of any kind of bigger picture, like and you feel like you're just living day to day, it's really hard to, after like having a bad day, to get up again and keep going. So I
Mhm.
think when you're able to keep it in perspective, it's a lot easier. One of my favorite quotes is like you often underestimate sorry you often overestimate what you can do in a year, but you underestimate what you can do in 5 years. And I think that's so key because so often, like we make a vision, you know, just for 2020 or just for 2019, and we expect so much from ourselves. But I think when you can just have a larger vision without necessarily a time frame, I think that's where the magic happens because then it's like you allow it, you know, you say the vision and you allow whatever like time frame is supposed to happen for you because who knows, like maybe that thing is going to come to you more easily in like another way instead of trying to force it. And that's something that I've really learned over the past because I used to be someone that would always set my goals by month, by year, and just now moving towards like more of a flow around my goals and like more of just like a larger picture and a larger vision and just allowing that to pull me instead of like pushing towards it and just running towards it, like instead just allowing it to like inspire me and motivate me. So yeah, like I have a vision board right here actually. I know this podcast is audio, but like some of the things I have on here are just like a picture of my parents being happy because like that's important to me, like a picture of me and my boyfriend, and like a picture of my travels and things like that. And I don't know for sure that all these things will happen like in 2020, but like these are all the things that like I would like to happen in my future. So yeah, so I think, yeah, going back to the question of what motivates you like long term, it's really just
Mhm.
having that vision and the importance of the clarity around it. Because if you just say a couple of very vague things, it's hard to focus on it and it's hard to remember it. But if you can like really picture it, like what does it actually look like all of that, you can really more easily tap into the feelings of it. And yeah, that's something we were talking about recently, is like really feeling into how it feels to have what you want, and trying to feel that like on your way to the journey. Like even right now, as you're working towards the vision, like trying to have those feelings of gratitude and like excitement and hope
Mm.
and fun, and like really feeling into that is really important, because that's how you get closer to it. You just feel it, because at the end of the day, we don't actually want all of these things. We mostly just want the feelings of how we think we're going to feel when we have them. So like if
Absolutely.
like your vision, yeah, I see you nodding your head. Yeah, so if your vision is like impacting a lot of people, like how does that really feel? Like do you feel proud? Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel like inspired? And just trying to keep those feelings now will like help you to get there, and like also just like keep you motivated on the journey.
Wow. Yeah. And they say that when you're able to embody those feelings that you want to feel, when you actually have that thing or you've reached that goal, that is how you can get that goal or that thing to truly manifest, is to really embody those feelings. And goal setting is great, and it's absolutely important to have clarity on your vision, like exactly what you said. But how do you stay motivated now, not being in that place that you want to be maybe 5 years down the road? How do you keep yourself motivated, and how do you enjoy the present moment when you don't have what it is that you want yet?
Totally. This is like the age old question that everyone also asks Abraham Hicks. I've been listening to a lot of that recently, so it just comes through. But it's basically almost being able to like ignore some of the things that your mind is perceiving as negative about the current situation, and instead focus on gratitude for what is, and focus on gratitude for what you want in the present. Like just try to feel into that, and not that you just ignore your reality, but you just don't allow it to be the main focus of your mind. Because when you think about something, I think for more than 17 seconds, it becomes like a dominant thought. And that's kind of like
Mhm.
the vibration that you start to move towards. Like if I start thinking like, man, like I know on my vision board, right? Like I want like a team of 2,000 people, but I only have 100, like that sucks. And like, and then it's like, you're thinking about the gap, and you're thinking like, I have 100, I want 2,000. Like, how do I fill the gap? And that becomes like a dominant thought, and now you're focused, instead of focusing on the 2000 or focusing on the abundance and the gratitude, you're focused on the lack, you're focused on the missing piece. And yeah, and that's why it's like you almost have to ignore the presence of this gap, and instead try to focus on gratitude. And the more that you can try to focus on gratitude towards what you have now and towards where you're going, the more it'll happen. So for example, instead of thinking about that gap, I can say like little statements that get me closer to it. So I can say like, I'm learning to have a bigger team. I'm learning to be a better mentor. I'm learning to enjoy, to have gratitude for what I have in the moment. And these like little believable statements will get you to the larger believable statement of like, I have a team of 2,000, for example. That's just like a random example. It can be really anything, but it's really about like, what are some things that I can believe that are currently true in my reality? And how can I use those beliefs to slowly move me towards the larger belief that I'm like trying to believe, but it still feels a little unbelievable. So yeah, so what Abraham Hicks really calls it is like, it's kind of like a merry-go-round. Like a merry-go-round goes really fast, and that's kind of like where you're trying to go. You're trying to go into the momentum of the higher vibration. And in order to get onto the merry-go-round, like you have to slow it down and then be able to like jump on it, and then you can go fast. So I think that's like such a cool analogy. So it's like having these like little beliefs that are believable in the present, that are slowly getting you towards being able to believe that like bigger belief. And then yeah, and then once you're able to like tap into that larger belief, your vibration will raise a lot, and you'll like really feel in flow, and like it'll just feel a lot better. And you can really just start to live your life more like acting as if, because yeah, a lot of people say like act as if what you want is already here, but like try to ignore your reality. But it's not really about trying to ignore your reality. It's about how can I find gratitude in the current reality and start to move my thoughts towards things that I can already believe about the future that I'm trying to go towards until like my future becomes more believable. I hope that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, that totally makes sense. And I really like that analogy that you shared from Abraham Hicks. I actually haven't heard of that before. And you're really inspiring me to look more into Abraham Hicks. And I also like how you said that it's about accepting our current reality, but also being motivated by our future. That is really what helps us appreciate our lives because, like you said, we don't want to forgo our current circumstance and we want to have appreciation for where we are right now, too, because at the end of the day, it is a part of our journey. Because at the end of the day, it is part of our journey. So it's important to appreciate every little part of our lives from, the very early stages, from, when we're almost climbing the top of the mountain. I think every single part of our life is very special and it's what makes us who we are. And so you talked about gratitude. So I'm wondering if you have any certain morning routine that you follow every single day, because they say that when you start your day off on the right foot, that impacts how the rest of your day pans out. So I'm wondering if you could maybe share a bit about how you usually start off your mornings.
Yeah, for sure. So when I wake up, the first thing I do is smile. Like I lie in bed and I smile. And I heard this from someone else that said like just be grateful that you're alive. Like you're literally alive for another day. Like so many people, I think like 15,000 or I don't know what number it was. People like don't make it through the night. Like people die in their sleep. Like I don't know. So yeah, first of all, just smile and be like, man, it's another day. Like I'm grateful. So that's the first thing I do. Then I just, brush my teeth and all of that. And then I go and I start meditating. So I basically bring my journal with me and I do like an abundance meditation. So I usually just choose one off of YouTube, honestly, not too complicated. And usually what it is basically just relaxing your body and then tapping into your heart, and just really allowing your heart to be filled with energy and just starting to think about the gratitude, whatever you have whatever you have gratitude for. So it can really be anything. You can start off with small things if you can't think of much, like I'm grateful for this bed I'm lying on, I'm grateful for my clothes, I'm grateful for the water I have access to, my food in the fridge, and then the people, like I'm grateful for Parnaz, I'm grateful for my friends, I'm grateful for my mentors, my different people that I'm surrounded by that allow me to be a better person, etc. So you just go into the state of gratitude. And then when I'm tapped into the state of gratitude, that's when I start to visualize. And so, yeah, visualizing kind of my dream board, like different things that I'm looking to experience. And in the process of visualization, really tapping into those emotions that we're talking about. So, like, what does it feel like when I'm like in that house or when I'm on that vacation with my boyfriend or all of these things, and just really feeling into those emotions. Um, so I do that. And then after I finish that, then I actually start writing out what I'm going to do. And before, I would just make a to-do list. But recently, what I'm doing is just thinking like, what feels good to do today? Like, what do I feel aligned or called to do? And sometimes it can be things that you don't even imagine. Like, for some reason, I'm being called to like learn Spanish right now, and I don't know why. But like, that just feels like really exciting to me. Like, who knows? Like, maybe that's a part of some part of my vision, right? And so, yeah, so that's really, I think, how we bridge the gap of where we want to go, and like not knowing how we're getting there is really just meditating on that end result and how it feels. And then from that like place of feeling good, then we start to get these ideas of like, hey, maybe I should do this or call this person or do this activity for my business or whatever it is. And yeah, I think those are when like the best ideas come to you. So yeah, so that's my little morning routine. I do try to do some kind of exercise. I've been doing more of that recently just to move my body, and I find that that helps me to just feel a little bit better as well. Um, yeah, that's basically it. Don't keep it too complicated. I make sure to drink your water. So one of the things that I've learned is that the reason we feel tired when we wake up is because we're dehydrated, because we lose a lot of our hydration like while we're sleeping. So if you can just drink that water like as soon as you wake up and you smile and all of that, that's going to help you with feeling like a lot more alert and also like help you wake up earlier. So that's just a little tip.
Wow. Yeah, gratitude is such a powerful thing. And, when you hear people say things like, write down, 3 things that you're grateful for or 5 things that you're grateful for, you think, okay, that sounds like really corny, but people underestimate the power behind focusing on gratitude because we tend to take a lot of things for granted. Like you said, life is just in and of itself a beautiful gift, and to be able to wake up every single morning and to be able to be healthy and alive, it's such a gift, and we need to really value just that. And when we kind of focus on the things that we have that we tend to take for granted, we really realize how much we are really living in abundance.
Mm-hmm.
um, so living with purpose to me means to live intentionally and to have this innate desire and passion for making a difference in the world in some way. And when you are living in this way, you are in alignment with who you are meant to be. So, do you mind describing how it feels to live with intention? And when do you know that you are in alignment?
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely a feeling. Kind of like we're talking about the gratitude in the morning, it picks up momentum. So I feel that every morning when you wake up, it's like a blank slate, or really any moment where you decide, like, all right, I'm going to, clear the energy that I've been feeling today and just start a blank slate. You slowly start to build the momentum. So as I was saying, like, I'm grateful to be alive, I'm grateful to be healthy, and then slowly, as you get into that, it's kind of like it starts picking up momentum until you get to a state where you just really feel good, and you really feel grateful and blessed and happy. And then from that state, you can really be intentional. And I think, yeah, intentional is just really about you doing your best and you just following your bliss and following what feels aligned in that moment. Um, I think that's really it. I hope that was enough of an answer. But yeah, that's really all alignment is. I think it's just being in the state of feeling of gratitude and abundance, and that's really how you allow things to come to you, is through that emotion and through just like living in that state. And I think also because obviously our lives aren't always going to go according to plan, like there might be something disturbing that happens, or something goes not according to plan on your schedule or whatever it is. um, I think it's always just taking a step back, like focusing on your breathing. I find that's a really good way to start to get back into the gratitude, is just like being like, all right, like really having the awareness of your thoughts to know when you are going down like a downward spiral of negativity or just feeling off. um, just being able to recenter yourself, just like sit back, just take some deep breaths, and then just try to focus on like one thought that feels good. Like it can be really anything. Like it can just be like, man, I feel so happy about like this pretty flower in front of me. And then just like focusing on that until you can start to get control of those thoughts again and start to feel the gratitude again. But it's really a practice. Like, when you're just starting off, it can be really, really easy to just let those negative thoughts just like take over. And it feels like the whole rest of that day, just like everything is not really going right. But as you start to gain like this muscle of like being able to shift and understand your thoughts, that's when you'll be able to start to shift back into alignment. And when you're in alignment, then things feel good again and things feel easy. And it should always like feel easy. Nothing should ever feel like forced in a sense. That's what I've been really learning too. And as someone that works really hard, sometimes I had that belief, and I had to realize it was also a belief that like everything has to be hard work in order to like happen. But I think the more you start learning about law of attraction and alignment, you learn that like it can feel good, like it can feel easy and abundant and happy to like achieve and get what you want. It doesn't have to be this like battle, which I feel like the media also kind of like shows that, you have to hustle all the time and stuff. And I know you're all about alignment too. So yeah, it's really a practice of like practicing and like slowly, you won't be perfect in the beginning. Like you will slip up and have those days where it feels like I still even have them where sometimes the negative thoughts are like just too much. And I'm like, all right, like that's it. Sometimes you just have to sleep at that point, and then just wake up the next day like feeling better. So yeah, so that's a bit about alignment.
I think you described not only alignment, but also what mindfulness is, really,
Mm,
because a lot of people might think, okay, like being in a mindful state means that like you're kind of like a blob, like you just don't like react to anything, you don't experience emotions, when really it's about experiencing those emotions, but having that self-awareness to observe your emotions and detach yourself from them. So let's just say you're in a car, you're in traffic, and the person in front of you is going really slow. So it starts like stressing you out because you're in a rush. Just by like observing and seeing like, okay, I'm stressed and this is why, and having that observation in and of itself is what mindfulness is.
mhm,
Because once you're able to observe your emotions and observe your thoughts, then you can separate yourself from it and kind of bring you back to center. So
mhm.
I really liked how you described that there. And, obviously, just kind of tapping into that mindful state and focusing on the good can really help us feel good. But a lot of times we're surrounded by a lot of noise. Maybe that's like, negative people or negative comments, especially when, you're out into the world and you're expressing who you are. You can be subject to a lot of negativity, right? So if you're a content creator and you're putting content out, you might get a lot of negative comments. So how do you personally block out the noise and not let that judgment hold you back from expressing yourself?
Yeah, totally, totally. So I think the more you get into alignment, the more that negativity will be repelled from you in a sense. So I find that sometimes if I'm feeling insecure or I'm feeling a little bit out of alignment, I tend to notice that more. And it's also about focus. So like if I get a negative comment and like I know in the beginning it's so easy, like one negative comment over like 10 good ones, you tend to focus on the negative one. And because your thoughts are so like focused in on this one negative situation, like you just notice more of that, right? It's kind of like that reticular activating system of the brain, like you notice what you focus on. So then it's like, oh, this person said this bad thing, and then like this other bad thing's happening today, and then you just like get caught into that. So the more that you can focus on something good, like a good comment or like a good situation, you attract more of that. But really like on a tangible level, like if I'm like in an environment that feels negative, like if I'm able to, like I'll put in headphones and I'll like put like something inspiring on, or like I'll just plug into like a high frequency like YouTube video or just something that makes me like feel better. Like if I physically have to be somewhere that is negative or there's like some kind of bad energy, but like most of the time, it's like really just being able to remove yourself from that situation in any way you can. And sometimes all you can really do is put in your headphones and listen to something better. When it comes to those negative comments, I think it's one is, if you are in a state where you have let that affect you, it's like remembering that you are seeing contrast and you're seeing challenges because your experience of life is all about like seeing things you don't want so that you can see what you do want. And it's just like you are bound to see negativity and challenges along this road. And that's really how you find your desires and how you find what it is that you do want, is by experiencing what you don't want. So sometimes you have to go through those challenges, but it's also just remembering that, those people that are feeling bad about what you're doing, those aren't the people that are meant for you. Like you, for whatever reason, have been called to share a message, or you've been called to like speak your truth or like be a voice or a leader in some capacity. And that's not for no reason. Like you haven't just, been called to do that for no reason. Like there's people that are out there that like need to hear this message or want to, or like looking for someone like you to speak up. And when you hold yourself back because of like one person that disagreed, you're like preventing all of those other people that could benefit from what you're saying to hear it. So it's just remembering that and being like, all right, like, these people were not meant for me anyway. So not like even expending your energy, like trying to defend yourself. Cause that happens to me too. When people, don't agree with my business model or some situation like that, I can easily be like, well, like they don't understand, and feeling like I have to go through this whole thing of like trying to explain to them. But you really don't. Like you really can just, wish them well and just like try to send them good light. Like I just try to send like positive energy to people that do me wrong, or just have that negative stance, and instead then try to like remember like why I'm doing what I'm doing, and like those people that can benefit from what I'm doing. Because yeah, all of us that are content creators in some way, like we felt called to share something, like we wanted to help people. And that wouldn't happen, I think, if like we weren't really meant to help others. So yeah, so it's like remembering that there's people that you're here to help and serve and inspire. And there's so many people that see the good in you, and just remembering that on those days where the negativity comes in.
Wow, yeah. I really, really liked how you described everything. I've just been enjoying everything that you've been saying. Like I'm just nodding my head as you're talking. I'm like, wow, I completely agree with that. And yeah, absolutely. When when you choose to express yourself, it's because there's a reason behind that. You're feeling called to share something, and by choosing to hide yourself or to not express yourself, you are doing a disservice to other people, because those people are not able to gain those gifts that you have to share, or learn the knowledge that you have to share, or whatever that it is that you have. Um, so a huge part of living with purpose is being able to express yourself, and kind of blocking out that noise or that judgment from holding you back from who you're meant to be and how you're meant to express yourself. So I'm wondering, for someone who hasn't really figured out where they want to be yet in life, they don't really know what their purpose is. They're just starting to figure out like, okay, how can I live with intention, and how can I build this drive to want to make a difference? How would you recommend for them to start figuring that out?
Yeah, totally. So I think when people don't have that clarity yet, it's because there's more that they have to learn about themselves. Um, so it's really like digging deep and trying to understand, like, who are you? Like, what inspires you? What do you feel that fuels you? Like, when do you feel most alive? Like, kind of just answering that question and being like, okay, like I know we were talking about this, like we feel so inspired when we're like at conferences, like hearing from others and like being around like-minded people, like that really fires us up. So we can think about like, how can we do that, right? So like you're doing that by starting a podcast and starting a brand, and like I'm doing the similar thing. And yeah, I think for others, they have to just really sit with that idea of what inspires them, what makes them feel good and happy. And if they can't really come to a good conclusion with that, then maybe it's just about trying new things until you really figure it out, because there's no harm in trying. And like, yeah, if you're spiritual at all, like we come to this planet, like our souls come to this planet to like have different experiences and learn and experience new things. And maybe if someone doesn't have that clarity, they just need to focus on what feels good to do in that moment, and maybe that's going to lead them to some new experience or some new ideas. So that's one way, is really just answering the question of what inspires you. Other things you can do are, again, about learning more about yourself. So I would do like the Enneagram test. That's going to tell you a lot about what you're driven by, like at an inherent personality level. The Myers-Briggs test, like that's another really good one that teaches you like how you work with others, and like, and from understanding like how you work with others and what motivates you, you can really think more about like what type of career paths or what type of activities you would enjoy. So like, yeah, like for my personality type, like the achiever, like that's pretty good for business, right? Because I can really set goals for business and go towards them. And then like the ENFJ is my Myers-Briggs type. So like I love to be a leader and help others. So like coaching like goes really well with that because I love to like have that mentorship kind of relationship with people. So yeah, do those tests, like really just go in and learn about yourself. And those tests will give you a really good basic understanding of what it is that motivates you and inspires you and how you work in a team. Another good one for teams is the DISC profile, DISC, which also tells you like how do you work in a team environment. So yeah, so really just do some of those tests and try to learn, like not necessarily doing a career test, but just a test of your own personal motivations and like desires and how you interact with others will give you a better understanding. And then you can think about, okay, like what are some careers or like businesses or different things I could do that like go well with what I naturally possess. And I think another one is also like strengths finders, right? So instead of focusing, it's about like instead of focusing on what you're not good at, focus on what you are good at and try to like optimize those. So you will get 5 strengths that are what your strengths are. And then you can use those to figure out, okay, like maybe for like I have focus on mine. So like that's a good one for like business or like futuristic or whatever you get, that's going to also help you figure out what you need to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think one of the first steps to really finding your purpose is building self-awareness. Like, who are you? Like, what drives you? What are your strengths? What are you good at? And it's interesting because growing up when we're in school, we're always taught to focus on our weaknesses, figure out what we're not good at, and improve those weaknesses. But the reality is that, we're all born with our own innate weaknesses, but we also have our own innate strengths. And when we figure out what our strengths are and we tap into those strengths and we use those strengths, we not only will be a lot happier, but we'll be able to achieve so much better results when we're actually using our strengths. So I love that nowadays in today's day and age, there's so many different free tools and resources out there for us to build that self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I also did the Clifton Strengths Finder, I think it is. I did another like Strengths Finder test as well, and I read a book about it. I also did the Enneagram, um, and I was a type 2, so I got the people pleaser Enneagram. But the good thing about being a people pleaser is that you just love being around people. You love making people happy. And when I did the Strengths Finder test, I found that a couple of my top strengths were communication, harmony, and achiever. So I realized that, like my calling is to work with people and to share and to just make a difference in the world, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think definitely those tests can really be helpful. So I'm just wondering, like, to someone listening who, is in a place where they just know that, they're meant to be somewhere different and they don't know what that place exactly is. How would you recommend for them to stay motivated and to maintain a positive attitude in their current situation?
Yeah, so let me tell a story that relates to this. So when I was living in Ottawa, when I was doing my master's degree, I was living with 3 roommates, and I didn't get along with them. I felt like really trapped in this like physical environment, which I felt was full of negativity and was just not aligned with who I was. And I knew that I was going somewhere different, like maybe 6 months from that time period, but I couldn't leave, right? And I felt like, okay, like I know something better is coming, like I don't know what it is. And I feel in those times, all you can really do is go within. Like you can't be looking outside for different like ways to escape, but you really have to go within and try to understand yourself a bit more. And in going within and shutting out, that physical reality that might not be what you want, you can start tapping into that higher self and you can start tapping into what it is that you do want. And always remember that you're presented with these challenging times for you to grow and for you to evolve and for you to determine what it is that you do want from life and really see it as a blessing. Like, yes, it's not what you want right now, but there's better days that are coming. And this is really the time for you right now to go within instead of trying to fix everything around you externally and physically, financially, whatever it may be, but rather just go within and yeah, just sit with yourself and just try to personally grow and improve, because once you raise your vibration and once you get more in alignment with yourself and your personal, like your soul, that's when your physical environment will slowly start to match what you feel. And that's really how we create our reality. It really starts from the internal. So yeah, maybe for whatever reason you've been placed in this current situation which you don't want, but again, go within, stay strong, like try to mentally really prepare and surround yourself with what does inspire you. Like when I was in that place, I just had this little room, but all over my room I had photos of what I wanted. I had like my whole wall was a vision board basically, and I had all these photos on the wall. If you go to my early YouTube videos, you'll see me in that room. And I remember just recording my YouTube videos when like no one was home and like trying to be quiet and like all of these challenges. And like I would even wake up early to leave the house before anyone woke up and like go to like go to like my school library and just like get a room and like film videos in there and just like listen to podcasts. And I always had like personal development in my ear, like when I was like getting ready in the morning, like when I was doing anything, like I knew that my environment was not supporting me, but I knew that I create my own environment in my mind. And we always, we spend our lives living in our minds. So you might as well make your mind like the best place it can be. And slowly over time, like I promise, like the physical reality around you will begin to change and like will begin to be in accordance with how you feel. And that's really what happened to me. I went from living in this place I hated to moving out into my own place, my own apartment, which was significantly more expensive, but I had raised my vibe so much at that period of time where I was like bringing in what I needed to like maintain that physical reality. And it was really cool to see how all of that shifted really in a matter of months from being in that bad physical reality to like what I wanted. And it was totally what I like had envisioned. So just trust in that like manifestation process and trust that all the challenges are there for you to like learn and grow and maybe to inspire others, right? Like I feel like others now can find the story inspiring, but it's only because I was able to go through it that, it's inspiring. So that is what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. And absolutely, your current circumstances don't necessarily define your future reality. And I think the fact that you kept that in mind is what really kept you going. You were inspired by this different reality that could possibly happen. And indeed, you did manifest a better future. So that's beautiful. I really, really like that. Well, thank you so much, Nika, for coming on as my very first guest on the Personal Empowerment Podcast. So, where can people find you if they are interested in connecting with you or learning more about you?
Yeah, for sure. So Instagram is probably the best place to find me. So my Instagram is the Positivity Boss. You can also find me on other platforms just with my name. So my full name is Nika Moeini, Nikamoeini, and I'm sure Parnaz can link like my Instagram to this episode when it's published, so you guys can check me out. But yeah, I would love to connect with you guys if anyone like resonates with any of my story, or even if you're just going through a challenging time and you just like want to be inspired and just to be lifted up, like I'm definitely happy to message you and chat with you. So yeah, send me a message and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Thank you, Nika. Okay.